Hey, I just wanted to share with you today my own personal struggles with acne. I thought I'd jump in here and just share my story in hope that it will help someone else who is struggling with the same, whether it be acne or skin issues or hormonal imbalances, to feel a little bit like you're not alone and that there is things you can do. So I guess my story starts back when I was in my teens. I got acne when I was, hit puberty. I didn't really know what to do about it. My mum didn't really know what to do about it. I didn't really understand what caused it. I just got really frustrated with it. And then it wasn't until I went through high school, and it wasn't until I sort of got to about 18 that I then got put on the oral contraceptive pill to fix it, which, by the way, doesn't fix it. If you're new to this, the pill doesn't fix your skin. It just masks it. But I didn't know that at the time. So I went on it. And actually, I went on a pill that actually made me quite depressed. And I remember going to a doctor and went back to the doctor, and she laughed at me. And since then, I have read evidence to say that yes, it can actually cause depression and anxiety. And one of the reasons for this is the hormones that you're taking, but also it can cause deficiencies in vitamins and minerals and damage to the gut. So lots of different people have said this to me afterwards, depending on what pill it was. I think it was Yasmin, not 100% sure, but I do know it definitely made me depressed, like really depressed, like to the point where I was like, I've got to get off this thing. It feels horrible. And I've had a lot of women tell me that afterwards. So then went on another one, which I can't remember what one it was either. But then I was on it for about 10 years. And during, my early 20s, I went overseas. I lived in London. Went traveling through Europe and was on the pill pretty much the whole time, and so didn't think my skin was okay. And sort of towards the end of the 10-year mark, it definitely did start to play up. But I'm going to go into a bit more about that story because there's a few things along the way that now I can look back and join the dots that have contributed to making my skin worse and other health conditions that I've had. So in my early 20s, living in London, I went around Spain for 5 weeks and decided to come home to Australia, but wanted to go home via Africa. I was sort of trying to spread the trip out as long as possible. So I went and did volunteer work in Africa. Before I left to go to Africa, I had to get a root canal in my tooth. And I could feel this tooth playing up, and went to an emergency dentist in London, and it cost me a fortune, was in tears. They did it all in one go. I remember they did it in 2 segments. They did it. They're come back an hour and a half, we'll do the next bit. Obviously didn't put a crown or anything on it, but I remember it costing me £1,200 or £800. I can't even remember how much, but it was a lot. It was enough to make me cry. And I was like, I'm going traveling, and I'm, ringing my friend and just in tears. And I've later found out that root canals can cause real damage to impact your meridian zones and things like that. They can be quite damaging because you're killing the root. And the root, each tooth is actually connected to different meridian zones. Root canals also, by the way, can get infected. And I've known people that have had their root canal done and then the infection sitting there, and they've later on had to get the tooth pulled, and there's been a big infection in there. So big problem. So anyway, that hasn't happened to me, but what happened was I then went to Africa. I was then took my little anti-malaria, trying to be a good little girl, and didn't realize that what I was taking was actually prophylactic, meaning it only works if you get malaria, and it was an antibiotic. It was doxycycline, and doxycycline is an antibiotic. And what I didn't know at the time is that antibiotics cause real damage to your microbiome. But my skin was looking fabulous because, of course, it was, because I was on antibiotics, so I wasn't getting these infections. And I remember going to a dermatologist later in Sydney and telling her that, and she's like, "Oh, well, you're on doxycycline." Of course, she gave me more doxycycline. In that time when I was in Africa, I then ended up having my appendix taken out. and emergency appendicitis in Mombasa. I was at the time working for an orphanage. I did some volunteer work for about 6 weeks in an orphanage, almost 8 weeks actually, in an orphanage in Mombasa, or outside Mombasa, which is on the coast of Kenya, and then ended up in hospital. Emergency, had this like nun bat out of hell driving down this road with like potholes, like to get me to hospital. And so I had the appendix pulled and didn't realize, like, they'll tell you that appendix has no purpose, but what they do now know is that the appendix holds a lot of bacteria and can actually, it's like a little storage center for bacteria. So when I look at the fact that I was on antibiotics for 3 months, it's no surprise that I got an appendicitis. So it would have been killing off that bacteria. There would have been things going on that would have impacted that. So that to me now doesn't surprise me. And I can link the dots. Came back to Australia, started working again. And 2 years later, I ended up being rushed to hospital with back pain. Thought I was healthy up until this point, like partied a lot, drank a lot, did all the things a normal girl in her 20s does. Really, burnt the candle, wasn't emotionally looking after myself, didn't know how to set boundaries, had a lot of emotions I hadn't dealt with, but thought I was normal, right? And that's probably quite normal for someone in their 20s. But 2 years later, after I came back from Africa, I had 2.5 years actually, but I was rushed to hospital with pain in my back and to find that there was a tumor in my kidney. And 5 days later, my kidney had to come out. Now, it was this really big blood vessel muscle mass. And what had happened was I was at the gym doing sit-ups with a medicine ball, like those turns, and felt a pop. And I thought I'd hurt my back. And I'd gone to a chiropractor in this excruciating pain. She sort of should have sent me to emergency. She didn't. 2 weeks later, the pain came back. So when I was in hospital, I was like, oh, shit. And it was a big wake-up call for me, right? This is a massive deal. This is the catalyst that changed me and changed my whole direction in my life. And sometimes we need these catalysts. It was a universal realignment for me. And what it made me do is look at every single thing in my life and be like, I don't want to live this way. I remember sitting in hospital, looking at people that were sick, that had tubes hanging out of them. There was a lady opposite me who was quite an obese lady. She was quite an obese lady, and her family was she'd had a hysterectomy, and her family was bringing in Maccas and other takeaway food. And I was just like, whoa, this is not, I was faced with my own mortality, and I was like, okay, how did I get here? I asked the surgeon what I could eat and drink when I left, now that I've only got one kidney. And he said to me, just as normal. And he knew nothing about me. He didn't ask me anything about my lifestyle. He didn't ask me anything about my mental health. He didn't ask me anything about how I was living. And so to go just as normal when someone's just had a kidney tumor, it's actually malpractice. Now I think about it. They're not trained. Doctors aren't trained that way. But for me, I'm like, that's so irresponsible. How many other people have you said that to that wouldn't have done what I did and go and look for more answers? They would have just taken it on face value and been like, okay, if you don't know, don't say it. Like, if you don't, just be like, oh, well, maybe I can refer you to someone, or maybe you want to look into that, or, he's just answering it from a very, I'm a neurologist type of perspective, but not looking at it from the whole picture, right? So that's what happened. And so one thing led to another. I was looking for answers, going, why did I get a tumor in my kidney? It was a really rare type of malignant tumor. I didn't have to have any chemotherapy, but what happened was it popped and a blood vessel burst and it bled in within itself. So when they took the whole thing out, it was actually quite large, and that's why I was getting so much pain. It was bled inside itself. They didn't know what to do. I had to go get brain scans and things like that to check it hadn't moved, it wasn't in my bones or my brain, which it wasn't. And so then I was sort of left to my own devices. That was it. I saw my oncologist once a year for 5 years afterwards. That was it. He also didn't ask me, you healthy? Yep. You looking after yourself? Yep. That was it. And I was like, is that it? That's it. That is it. Like, is that all the support I get? And so I went and took things into my own hands. I looked into the emotional causes. I got interested into why. I knew there was this like big driver of something emotional that I didn't know how to put my hand on. It was almost like I had this stored emotion in my body that I didn't know how to release, and the tumor just went and it needed to come out, right? So one thing led to another. I got into nutrition, got really into nutrition and yoga because that was the obvious thing. It was the lowest hanging fruit for me to find immediate answers. Went and saw a naturopath, got really inspired and was like, I think I want to study this. Now in that process, on that journey, I actually was like, right, I've got to come off the pill. I knew by that stage that the pill wasn't healthy. I knew it was causing damage, and I was like, the next obvious step in my health journey is to come off this, because otherwise I'm not going to. By that stage, I was breaking out again, like getting this hormonal cystic acne on my chin line here, but also here, up here. And I decided to go off the pill cold turkey. Stupid decision. I don't recommend doing that. I recommend doing and getting support, which I now quite hand on heart say I like to support women doing that process purely so that they don't have a horrible experience like I did. And so I then went and studied nutrition, and during this process was really on my own health journey because I had this condition called post-pill syndrome, which basically means you have your hormones are offline when you are on the pill. If you didn't know, your hormones are completely offline. You're not making hormones. You're not making progesterone. You're not ovulating when you're on the pill. And so if you've been on the pill for a long time, it takes time for your pituitary gland and your ovaries to wake up. And so that's what happened to me. And in that process had lots of crazy hormonal acne. And I remember going to this funeral of a really old friend of mine, a family friend, and just being horrified that my skin was so bad. And I didn't really want to hang around, just purely because I was embarrassed about how bad my skin was. I had like volcanoes literally on my chin. And I know how horrifying it can be. Like, it's just so debilitating. It can really affect your confidence. It really, you're mortified about what people are going to think. I also was in a relationship at the time where I was criticized for my skin, like teased for my skin, and that really affected my own confidence. And it just really, I know how damaging and how heartbreaking it can be, and you're not living life to the fullest. So eventually, like, I've gone through a lot of trial and error with this, and my skin is my weak point, like when I'm not looking after myself, or when I've been burning the candle, or when I'm super stressed and not managing my stress, so not calming my nervous system and keeping it regulated, it shows up on my skin. It does. And so that's my indicator now. So rather than being angry at it, it's like, okay, this is the indicator that there's more work to do, or that I'm not looking after myself and I need to really like rein it in. And I just wanted to share this with you. I now know what works for my body, what doesn't work for my body. I like to say that the acne is an inside job. 80% inside, 20% outside. It does also matter how you look after your skin. I feel like I didn't really get taught that as a teenager. And it really can, but what I want you to know is, I'm in different groups and stuff on social media, and I see people get so desperate, they go on Roaccutane, and Roaccutane is really damaging. You can't, just to give you some context, like, you can't be pregnant on Roaccutane and you have to terminate. So just to give you some idea of how damaging that can be, it was really damaging to the liver. It's not something you want to be on. It's a synthetic form of vitamin A. It's not good for you. So a lot of people go on it, but it doesn't actually fix the underlying core, like the underlying driver of the skin issue. So I just want you to know that there's things you can do. Please do not lose hope if you're watching this. If you're watching this and you know someone that is struggling with their skin or hormones, or you're just feeling inspired by this, please like it and please share it with anyone that you think might need this. And please reach out to me if you've got questions. I don't bite. If you've got questions and you want some support, or you just want to be pointed in the right direction. But, really, I've created a program for my own wellness program, and when I work with people, and it's based on not only what I've learned through my training, but really on my own trial and error, and my own experience of going through this experience myself, and overhauling my health from since I had my kidney removed. And that's really what's come of it, and that's my story, and that's how I got here. And I'm very grateful for going through that experience of losing a kidney, and even going through the experience of struggling with skin, because I wouldn't be who I am today without those experiences. As much as it's the struggles that make us stronger and make us who we are, and we've just got to have the ability to reflect on that and see the gold nuggets in that. And sometimes that can be really difficult. But if this resonated with you, please reach out to me, or please share it with anyone that you think might need it. And I'll see you guys soon. Ciao.